I used to think love was loud. Fireworks. Laughter across the room. Hands grabbing each other during a moment of joy so pure you had to share it with someone. That's what Anna and I had in the beginning. Loud love. Messy breakfasts. Late-night grocery runs. Kisses in the frozen aisle because we couldn't wait for home. But then one day it got quiet. Not all at once, not in a way you could point to and say, here. This is where it changed. It happened in the slow way rust eats metal. Small things. Missed calls. Excuses. The way her phone was always face down now. The way she started showering at night instead of in the morning like she always had. I sleep better after a hot shower, she'd say, brushing her hair back. It relaxes me. And maybe it did. Maybe that's all it was. But the gut doesn't lie. Mine had started to twist every time she said goodnight and turned over, pulling the covers a little too quickly. I didn't want to be suspicious. God knows I'd always prided myself on trusting her. I'd watched other men ruin good things by being paranoid. I wasn't going to be that guy. I wasn't going to check her phone. I wasn't going to count the minutes between her texts. I wasn't going to become a man I couldn't respect. But the truth is, trust without attention isn't love. It's blindness. And I think I've been blind for a long time. The night it happened started like any other. We had dinner, quiet, unremarkable. She barely touched her plate. Said she was tired. Said she had a headache. I asked if she wanted anything, and she just shook her head. I think I'll lie down early, she murmured, already walking toward the bedroom. I sat in the living room alone, listening to the clock tick and the ice melt in my untouched drink. Something in the air felt wrong. Like the world had taken one step sideways and I hadn't noticed until now. Around midnight, I went into the bedroom. She was lying with her back to me, scrolling through her phone like she always did when she thought I wasn't looking. I slipped into bed without a word. My heart wasn't ready to fight. I just wanted to rest, but rest doesn't come easy when your mind keeps whispering possibilities. I faced the wall, closed my eyes, and pretended to sleep. 20 minutes passed. Maybe 30. I kept my breaths even still. I heard her shift slightly, the mattress barely dipping. Then the glow of the phone. Then her voice, soft, low, like she was speaking into the smallest part of her world. Hey! I miss you. I'm next to him right now and he has no idea. A pause. A quiet laugh. I'll sneak out tomorrow. Same place? The words hit like ice water. I didn't move. Not a flinch. I felt the gravity in the room change. I realized with horrifying clarity that she thought I was asleep. That she'd whispered those words knowing I was lying beside her because she was so sure I wouldn't hear. So sure I wouldn't believe what was happening even if I did. My pulse roared in my ears, but I stayed still. Silent. And then, an idea. Cold. Mechanical. I had seen her pair her phone to the Bluetooth speaker before when we listened to music while cleaning. It was still saved in her device settings. She didn't realize I had turned it on earlier that day to fix the lag. All it would take was one button. One small command. So I waited. I watched the faint blue light from the speaker blink under the dresser. I waited until she tapped the screen again, probably to replay or send another message. I reached for my phone, hidden beneath the edge of the blanket. No movement. Just one tap. Play from Bluetooth. The room filled with her voice. Not just soft now, loud, clear, alive in the air between us. Hey! I miss you. I'm next to him right now and he has no idea. The silence after that was nuclear. I felt her freeze. She turned slowly as if motion itself betrayed her. I opened my eyes. Met hers. She looked like she had seen a ghost. I didn't say anything. I didn't ask who. I didn't scream or cry or beg for context. I reached over, grabbed my keys from the nightstand and stood up. Her mouth open, maybe to lie, maybe to beg, but I was already walking. I didn't slam the door. I didn't need to. The truth had already made all the noise. The hallway outside our apartment was dead quiet, just the low hum of the exit light casting shadows on the floor as I stood there, keys clenched in my fist like they were the only thing holding me together. I didn't know where I was going, I just knew I had to move. The walls inside the bedroom had felt too tight, like they were closing in around me with every word of that message still echoing in my ears. He has no idea. But I did. I knew too much now. I walked down the stairs, skipping the elevator because I didn't want to be stuck in a metal box with my own thoughts. I made it to the parking lot and just stood by the car for a moment, the cold air snapping at my skin, doing nothing to numb the burn inside my chest. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was in that strange, disembodied state just after the crash, but before the pain really settles in, when your body knows something irreversible has happened but your mind hasn't caught up. I unlocked the car, sat down in the driver's seat, and turned the ignition just to have something else to listen to besides her voice. But her voice was everywhere now. The tone she used when she thought I couldn't hear. The softness. The secrecy. It wasn't meant for me. And that was what shattered me the most. She had spoken that way before to me. Years ago. On the phone during our first long-distance phase, whispering late at night that she missed me. That was the version of her that I believed still existed. I drove aimlessly for hours, not watching the time or the roads, just letting the lights blur past me. At some point I ended up near the marina. The boats rocked gently in the water, lit by a few lazy lamps swaying in the breeze. I used to bring Anna here. We'd get coffee and sit on the hood of the car, legs dangling, talking about where we'd sail someday if we had the chance. Greece. Maybe the Amalfi Coast. She'd laugh and say we'd get lost in the Mediterranean and never come back. I used to think that kind of dreaming kept love alive. Now I realized she probably said the same things to someone else. I stayed there until the sun began to stretch thin blue light across the sky. I didn't sleep. I didn't even try. I just sat and let the truth do its work, stripping away every memory we'd painted over in colors that weren't ever real. Around 6:30 I drove back. Not because I wanted to see her, but because I needed clothes, my laptop, my documents, pieces of my life that still lived there, trapped in the space we once called home. When I walked in, the apartment was silent. Not the normal quiet. This was the aftermath kind. The kind that sits heavy in the air like smoke after a fire. She was on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, eyes wide like she hadn't slept either. She didn't speak. She just watched me move around the room, gathering my things. I didn't look at her. I couldn't. If I did, I might soften. And I wasn't ready to let her back into any place she'd chosen to leave behind. When I stepped into the bedroom, the air hit different. The sheets were still messy, the speaker light off now. That moment, her voice echoing through the air, played over again in my mind like a scene I couldn't escape. I grabbed a duffel bag and filled it with just what I needed. When I zipped it up and turned, she was standing in the doorway. Pale. Small. Like a version of herself that had been stripped of all the armor she'd worn. James, she whispered. My name didn't sound right in her mouth anymore. I didn't answer. I walked past her. But she followed me into the hall. Please. Let me explain. I stopped at the door. Explain what? My voice was low, cracked. That you lied? That you called someone else while I was lying next to you? What part of that message needed explanation? I didn't mean for it to happen like this, she said quickly. It was a mistake. I was stupid. I thought you didn't care anymore. That one hit harder than I expected. You thought I didn't care? I turned to face her, eyes locked. I work 12-hour days. I cook dinner even when I'm exhausted. I listen to your mother rant about the HO and never complain. I've been here. Every damn day. I never stopped caring. You stopped seeing me, she said, voice shaking. You were here, but it was like I wasn't part of your world anymore. So instead of talking to me, you whispered into your phone like a teenager cheating past curfew? I didn't plan it, she said again. It just happened. I shook my head. Nothing just happens. You chose it. You built it. You watered it and watched it grow. Her eyes welled up, and for a split second I saw the girl I married. The one who used to trace patterns on my chest at night and say she couldn't sleep unless I was there. But that girl was a memory now. A ghost. I opened the door. I'll be in touch about the lease. Don't contact me unless it's about logistics. James, please? Her voice cracked. Don't throw this away. You already did, I said, and closed the door behind me. I didn't look back. The door clicked behind me like the punctuation on a chapter one wasn't ready to finish but couldn't keep writing. I stood in the hallway holding the weight of my own silence, listening to the stillness on the other side as if I might hear some last-minute truth scrape its way through the crack. But there was nothing. No movement. No footsteps chasing after me. Just absence. A clean, hollow kind. I walked out into the gray morning, the sky still low and colorless, and for a second I wasn't sure where I belonged. Not in that apartment. Not in her orbit. But also not anywhere that still remembered us as a we. I got in the car, tossed the duffel into the passenger seat, and drove. Not fast. Not wild. Just enough to outrun the feeling of everything closing in. I ended up outside a motel on the edge of the city. Cheap. Unassuming. The kind of place built for people who needed to disappear for a night. The woman at the front desk didn't ask questions. Just slid the key across the counter and offered me a tired smile that said she'd seen 1,000 variations of my face, men with nowhere else to go and too much inside them to say out loud. The room smelled faintly of bleach and old air. I dropped the bag on the floor and sat on the edge of the bed without unpacking. My hands rested on my knees, but the weight wasn't physical. It was in my chest, my spine, the ache behind my eyes that hadn't gone away since I first heard her voice fill the room like it didn't belong to me anymore. I thought about calling someone. Margaret, maybe. Her mother had always been gentle with me even when Anna wasn't. She once told me that I brought calm into their family like I balanced out the storms. But I didn't want pity. And I sure as hell didn't want to cry into the phone with someone who would quietly, heartbreakingly agree that they saw it coming. So I sat there, blinking at the muted TV across the room playing some cooking show where everything was too clean and too bright and too scripted. It made me nauseous. I turned it off. The silence came back immediately like a wave crashing over me. I lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling fan turning slowly, too slowly, like it was mocking the pace of my thoughts. My mind started drifting in fragments. Our first apartment, tiny, too warm, walls thin as paper. We'd made love on the floor because the bed frame hadn't arrived yet. She called it romantic. We laughed about it for weeks. I remembered the time we got caught in the rain during that weekend road trip and had to sleep in the car. She curled up against me, teeth chattering, and whispered, "This is still the best night of my year." That voice? That whisper? The same one she used in that message, but now directed at someone else. I squeezed my eyes shut like it might shut out the memories. It didn't. They came in anyway like smoke through a broken window. I kept replaying the moment I tapped the Bluetooth icon. That decision. That small, deliberate move. It felt so clean, so simple. But its consequences were seismic. She thought I was asleep. That was the part that haunted me the most. Not just that she lied. Not just that she whispered someone else's name while I was next to her. But that she felt so safe in her deception that she didn't think I'd ever wake up. As if I had become so irrelevant, so passive in her life that I didn't even factor into her caution. I wasn't a threat. I was furniture. A presence too dull to challenge her new reality. And maybe that's what hurt the most, not the betrayal itself, but what it said about how she saw me. I wasn't worth lying well to. I must have drifted into some half-sleep because I woke up a few hours later to the buzz of my phone. It was a message from Margaret. I heard, "I'm so sorry. You don't have to answer. I just wanted you to know whatever happens next, you are not alone." I stared at the screen for a long time before setting it down. It was the first kind thing anyone had said to me since this started. It hit harder than I expected. I stood, splashed water on my face, and stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. I looked like someone who had been hollowed out and stitched together badly. My eyes were bloodshot, my jaw tight, but underneath it I saw something else. A flicker of clarity. Of someone who had survived a truth they didn't want but maybe needed. I sat down at the small desk in the corner and opened my journal. I hadn't written in it for over a year. We used to joke that journaling was therapeutic James trying to fix the world. But that night I didn't write to fix anything. I wrote to bleed it out. I wrote the sentence, "She thought I was asleep," and stared at it for 10 full minutes. Then I added, "But I wasn't. I was just quiet, and that was my mistake." The next morning came without mercy. The kind of morning where the light feels like it's exposing you instead of warming you, cutting across the room like it knows what happened and doesn't care how gently it wakes you. I hadn't slept much, but I had stopped shaking. I sat at the edge of the motel bed, feet flat on the carpet, and listened to the sound of someone wheeling a suitcase down the hallway outside. The world was moving. People were packing up and heading to airports, to weddings, to jobs they hated and homes they loved. Somewhere, someone was falling in love for the first time. Somewhere else, someone was cheating for the fifth. And I was just sitting there, trying to decide what to do with the pieces of my life that had collapsed so quietly I hadn't even heard them break until it was too late. I didn't want to go back to the apartment. I didn't even want to know if Anna was still there. The idea of her existing inside the same walls we once called home made my skin feel too tight. But I needed to speak to someone who had known us before the silence. I scrolled through my contacts, skipped past familiar names that no longer felt safe, landed on Margaret. My thumb hovered for a second. Then I pressed call. She answered fast. "James?" Her voice sounded cautious, like it was bracing for news it didn't want to hear. "Yeah. Sorry. I didn't know who else to talk to." "Don't apologize," she said immediately. "You can always call me. You know that." There was a pause. Then, "Are you okay?" "Not really," I said. "But I'm functional. Do you want to come over?" I hesitated. "I don't want to make it weird." "You're not. I just made coffee. And banana bread." I almost laughed. I don't know why banana bread nearly broke me. Maybe because it was normal. Soft. Human. I told her I'd be there soon. The drive was short, but every street felt longer than usual. I passed the old bookstore Anna and I used to wander into on rainy Sundays. The little diner where we'd argue about what song was playing. The park bench where I first told her I wanted to marry her. Memory was everywhere, like glass I couldn't stop stepping on. When I pulled up to Margaret's house, she opened the door before I knocked. She didn't ask anything. Just pulled me into a hug so maternal, so full of sorrow and strength, I almost crumpled into her arms like a child. She didn't say I'm sorry again. I think she knew it wouldn't help. We sat in the kitchen. The banana bread was warm. I stared at it, unsure if I could eat, but the smell reminded me of safer years. I don't want to put you in the middle, I said. But I had to get out of that motel. You needed someone who wasn't lying to you, she said softly. I nodded. She poured coffee. No questions. Just presence. Just the sound of a spoon stirring and the quiet breath of someone who's letting you hurt without trying to fix it. After a while, she looked at me. I don't know what Anna's thinking, she said. She hasn't called me since it happened. I only know what I saw in her face the night you left. It was like someone who'd suddenly realized they'd set fire to their own house. It wasn't sudden, I said. She's been striking matches for a while. Maybe, but you didn't deserve to burn with it. I exhaled slowly. I think what's killing me is that I don't even want to know the details. I don't care who he is, how long it went on, or what she thought she was missing. I just care that she stood next to me in bed and still chose to speak to someone else like I didn't exist. Margaret looked down. Some people don't know how to be real until it's too late. And some people think love means staying quiet. But I've seen how you loved her, James. You didn't disappear. She just stopped looking. I stayed at Margaret's that night. She offered the guest room, the same one we'd stayed in during Christmas 3 years ago when the pipes burst at our apartment. I remembered Anna laughing as we blew up the air mattress and teased each other about who snored louder. That was another version of her. A warmer one. I didn't know where that girl went. I stared at the ceiling that night and realized something strange. I wasn't mourning her as much as I was mourning who I was around her. The man who used to feel chosen. I had been so much trying to keep things afloat that I forgot to notice I was the only one rowing. The next morning, I woke up early and sat on the porch with a cup of coffee. The sky was pink with early sun. Birds cutting across the quiet. I opened my phone. No messages from her. Just a single email. Subject line, I'm sorry. I didn't open it. Not because I wasn't curious, but because I knew whatever she wrote wouldn't change what had happened. It wouldn't unring the bell. It wouldn't silence her voice in that room. I sat there for a long time, holding the mug between my hands like it might warm more than just my fingers. Margaret came out and joined me without a word. She looked out at the trees. You don't have to decide anything yet, she said. But when you do, make sure it's not about punishing her. Make sure it's about choosing you. I didn't answer, but I knew she was right. Something was ending. But something else, something quieter, maybe more honest, was just beginning. 3 days passed. I stayed at Margaret's, helping her fix the leaky faucet in the upstairs bathroom, repainting a chipped section of her hallway that had been bothering her for months. She said I didn't need to, but I think we both understood I needed to do something with my hands. Something small. Something I could fix. Because everything inside me still felt unfixable. I didn't talk to Anna. I didn't open the email. I knew that inside it were words she wrote with trembling fingers, maybe even tears in her eyes. But what could she say that her voice hadn't already confessed to the whole room? What could she write now that wouldn't sound like damage control? There's a point in grief, because betrayal is grief, when the pain stops being loud and becomes structural. You don't cry as much. You don't feel the sharp stabbing anymore. It's more like a slow pressure in your ribs, a heaviness behind your eyes, a dull fatigue that makes even tying your shoes feel like a task. That's where I was. Not angry. Not broken. Just hollow. The space where love had lived now felt like a long vacated house with dust on the windowsills and silence in the halls. I took walks. I drank coffee with Margaret and listened to her stories about her first husband who died young, about raising Anna alone, about the things she never told her daughter. We build people up in our minds, she said one morning. We tell ourselves they're better than they are. But when they fall, it's not just them who breaks, it's the story we wrote about them. That stayed with me. The story I wrote about Anna was beautiful. Too beautiful. I made her into someone who would never do this. Someone who loved me too much to look away. But love, I've learned, isn't always loud or obvious. Sometimes it fades in quiet corners, sometimes it vanishes with the smallest of lies. And sometimes it wasn't real to begin with, not in the way you needed it to be. On the 4th day, I went back to the apartment. I had to. I needed to close the door myself. I didn't text ahead. I didn't ask if she'd be there. I half hoped she wouldn't. When I unlocked the door and stepped inside, the lights were off. The place was clean, too clean. A glass of water on the table, folded laundry on the armrest. Like a museum of our life. She must have stayed here, waiting. Or maybe she'd gone. Either way, it didn't matter. I moved through the apartment slowly. My jacket still hung on the hook by the door. My razor in the bathroom. My coffee mug in the cabinet. Things that looked like mine but didn't feel like they belonged to me anymore. I gathered the rest of my things quietly, methodically. I took my books, my sweaters, a framed photo of my father I kept on my desk. I left everything else. I didn't take the photos of us. I didn't take the painting she bought on our 2nd anniversary. I didn't even look into the drawers where she kept her letters and notes. Those parts weren't mine to carry. I was almost at the door when I saw it. A small envelope, propped against the lamp on the hallway table. My name in her handwriting. I picked it up but didn't open it. Not yet. I didn't want her words to follow me out the door. I wanted the silence instead. I stepped into the hallway, locked the door one final time, and dropped the key through the mail slot. That sound, the small metallic clink, felt like the end of a symphony. The final note. I got in the car and drove without music. Just the sound of tires and thoughts. When I got to my new place, a small rental near the park, I unpacked, made coffee, and sat down at the kitchen table. I stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. It wasn't long. 3 paragraphs. Apologies. Regrets. Memories of better times. I miss the way you used to look at me, she wrote. Not because of how it made me feel, but because it reminded me I was still worth being seen. She said she wasn't asking for another chance. She knew that door had closed. But she wanted me to know that what we had wasn't all pretend. That some part of her had loved me even if she didn't love me enough to stay true. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. I didn't need to read it again. It wasn't a roadmap. It was a gravestone. That night, I lay on a mattress on the floor, boxes still unpacked around me. It should have felt like a mess, but it didn't. It felt like a beginning. An unfinished beginning. But mine. For the first time in weeks, I slept. And I didn't dream of her. If you're still listening, if this story feels like your story, know this: betrayal doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it crawls into your bed and wraps itself in warmth and routine and kisses your forehead before falling asleep next to you. But when you wake up to the truth, when you finally hear it in the silence or through a speaker or in a look they didn't mean to give away, don't ignore it. Don't shrink. You are not wrong for noticing. You are not broken for feeling it. And you are not weak for walking away. You are still whole even when someone tried to take pieces of you without permission. If this hit you somewhere deep, leave a comment. Let someone else know they're not alone. And if you've ever found strength in silence or in one brave step toward a better life, subscribe. There's more to come. You're not done yet. Neither am I.